Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Asp.Net Monsters. This is episode number 28, I believe, and today we're going to talk about integrating with third-party APIs, and specifically we're going to talk about integrating with Stripe, the payment processor.
That's right. We also do have an announcement that we want to make, but looking around, I don't I
Yeah,
don't see
still
I don't see
sick, I
Orange
guess.
Monster. Yeah. Unfortunately. So we will have to wait for that announcement. But today payment processing. So, if you are building an app and you want to collect monies from the people who are visiting your app, then you can go through the process of getting tens of thousands of dollar deposit down and a merchant account and all of these things in place, and then write your own gateway to a credit card processor, or you can just simply adopt a third party, which seems to be the how people do it these days. There's no longer the
Yeah,
merchant account approach.
that seems way better. Let's do that way.
Right, roll our own right from the start. So, before I get into this, I just want to I think this is why, um, this is the reason why we have the internet. Would you look at that dog? I mean, come on. I need to get my
Oh
scrolling
goodness, if
working.
we like reduced ourselves to just sharing pictures of dogs
Well,
on our
it's puppy.
podcast
It's
now?
a look at that thing. It's absolutely adorable. Okay, came across my Twitter feed. Okay, so what I've done is I've created an account on Stripe, and so it's pretty easy. You just need your email address and a couple of pieces of information. It took me like a minute and a half. I wanted to I wanted to kind of go this route of, okay, well, I want to have people subscribe to something for like X number of dollars per month. So I came to under subscriptions, and they've got this other thing where you can just do like products straight up or whatever the case may be. But I went this route of subscriptions. So I put this plan in, and this is pretty easy as well. We have to pick an identifier for the plan so that we can identify it via the API. We give it a name that can be used to display not only in our admin console, but it comes back as the properties through the API. Pick a currency. Monsters are, we're north of the border, so we use that weird CAD symbol.
The best dollar.
The fluctuating dollar. We select our interval, our trial period in days, and then a statement description. So this is what it looks like on your invoice, and that'll actually be what it shows up on the credit card statement. So as it gets processed. So I've already created the standard monthly plan, and I gave it this. STD monthly. In hindsight, that's maybe not the best acronym, but we'll go with STD monthly. Um, and then the next thing that I need to do is capture my API key. So I'm just going to go into my account settings really quickly. And I can get those. Oh, it's actually even just prompting me. It's like, hey, you're doing this thing. You should probably use the right password to start with. We'll go with that one. And then there we go. And then I can capture these keys. This gives you the ability to roll keys from this interface. There's also a test which puts you against it kind of compartmentalizes your requests and puts it into a different kind of mode. So it's kind of like a sandbox mode. The transactions, everything seemed to appear in the dashboard. I'm not a Stripe expert. I just wanted to start accepting payments. So we'd have to dive in a little bit further on what that's actually going on. But these ones do not process against the real credit card system. In fact, there's only one credit card number that works. So we'll talk about that in a second. When we want to go live, then we use this set of keys down here. And don't you worry, all you people watching my API keys, the minute we are done recording this video, I'm clicking the roll button. So this will be gone.
That's right, try. Don't you try anything.
Okay, so now I've got my API keys. I'm going to pop back over into Visual Studio. There's a private key and a public key. And the way this works is that when we're on the server side and we're calling into Stripe, we're going to use our private key. This is one that never gets out to the web. We've also got a public key, and this is used when we're using the JavaScript side of things. So this is actually something that will go out to the browser. So you can't actually do any of the interesting bits, as far as I can tell, with the public key. You kind of need to use the private key and have some other process happening on the back end. There is this is for the integrated payments inside of your own website. There's another payment option that they've got where the Stripe interface is displayed in line, and there's a token that's passed back, and then that's safe to do via JavaScript. But this, we're doing the server-side processing for this particular example. So I've created this class called Payment Settings, and you'll recall from our earlier episode on configuration using the options pattern that I can now, because I've got this, as long as I put these settings into some kind of configuration, then I can extract them using and inject them into my controllers and even into my views if I set it up correctly. So I've taken those test keys, I've pulled them into my private and public keys. So these are the payment settings, as in the payment settings class. We can see here, and then these properties are reflected inside my JSON as well. This is the secrets.json, so this can be administered either via the user secrets command from the console, or you can just right-click on it and say right-click on your project and say manage user secrets from here. We can get our settings set up. Now, we could save these in, and we've talked about this a few times too, but we could save these in our application settings. But if we're doing something like saving this to a repository, then our keys are out there in GitHub if it's not a private repository. And you're sharing them with your entire team, regardless of whether or not you trust them all. So probably a better idea to keep them in user secrets and then come up with a different way to deploy them. So now that that's in place, I've got my payment settings class. What we need to do is just make sure that in our startup, we are loading up our user secrets, which we are doing in the constructor here. So if it's in the dev environment, it's going to add user secrets, and we'll go from there in other options. Okay. So the next thing is in configure services, I am setting up that dependency injection capable option patterns thing. So I'm reading the payment settings section from my configuration. In this case, it's reflected in user secrets, and I'm saying that that is of type payment settings. So it's going to pull those values in and type it out for me here. This now allows me to inject it wherever I want to. So that's my payment setting side. In project JSON, I just pull in Stripe.net. Again, you get the tab completion and all those wonderful things. So that's pretty easy to get set up.
So, sorry, you've just closed that file, but I was going to ask, so does Stripe support the .NET Core, or are we running some full framework?
I am running full framework, but do you know what? We can check and see real quick here. It's pretty easy. So, what are my other? What are we on right now?
You're asking me questions I don't know the answer to. DNX Core 5.0 is what I have on mine.
Okay, so we'll just add that as a dependency, and we'll save that out, and it will try and restore packages, and we'll see if Stripe is supported on DNX Core. There we go. And yeah. So yeah, actually it does support awesome. DNX Core. So it's ready to go on multi-plat, I guess. So that's great. So I'm going to take this out just as a, just to keep things simple and kind of stay on course. And then there's a couple of other things that we need to do. So when we've got this concept of a customer, and we're doing a third-party integration, we want to be able to track the fact that whether or not this customer has purchased something before. Because in the Stripe API, if you want a customer to purchase something, you need to create a customer account inside their application, and that isn't done inherently through creating a customer inside of your application. So you have to decide as an application developer when that's going to happen. In my case, what I did is I just took the application user, did a couple of things. I created a subscription object, which we'll have a look at in a second, and a collection of subscriptions. And the intent here, these will actually be saved. These are just descriptions of those subscriptions, and they'll actually be saved into my local database. So as I purchase additional subscriptions, I've got some local subscription information. The nice thing about this is it lets me say, for example, is this user currently authentic, or does this user have a current subscription, and I don't need to make a call out to an API. So just as when the user returns, I can quickly look up and see if they've got. I've also added this customer identifier. This comes back as a string from the Stripe API, and when we create a customer, we're going to attach the customer identifier back to the application user. There's about 100 ways that you can do this. This is just something that I pulled in, and I've got things like first name, last name, company name, website URL. So whatever you would have in your registration model. Okay, so that's the application user. The other one that I talked about was the subscription. So we'll just pop into there really quickly. These are the identifiers and pieces of information that are that come back as a result of creating a subscription inside of Stripe. So when I say the user is purchasing this package by that ID that we had back in the UI there, let me pull that back up. So when I say they're purchasing a monthly STD package, Stripe returns back this model with this information in it. So we're going to capture this and save it into the database as well. So some of this is, I would probably argue that this isn't all entirely production code, but it is working. Works on my machine. So the next step, because I've extended the application user model, there's a default migration that's created for us for creating the identity and all of that. That's just part of the project template. But in my case, I also had to create a secondary migration just to get the identity. Now, the other thing I could do is I could blow out that first migration that's created for me by default, and then I could just recreate them. And that is completely feasible. So let me just pop up here. That one is not the correct PowerShell window. That's how you know that a developer is cool, is because they don't know which PowerShell window to open up.
You've got so many of them that it's just a way to keep track of them.
So I'm just going to update my database just as a first step. And now because my database hasn't been created, it's also going to go out and create the database, so it's a little bit longer on the first step. I'm just going to pull this up just so we can kind of follow along what's happening. And then as soon as this is created, I just need to wait for these migrations to run. And I'm going to pop into SSMS as well. And there we go. So I can refresh my database list. And in here, I now have this Stripe integration database. And we can see in here, I've got the subscription table, and my Asp.Net users table will have my columns that I expect in it, such as the customer identifier. Okay, so right now, as you would expect as well, if I select top 1,000 rows, there's going to be no rows here. So we'll come back to that in a second. So we've got this concept of subscriptions. We've got this concept of our user. We've got this integration with the third-party payment processor that we need to create a customer, track it. We need to create subscriptions, and we want to track it just for convenience sake, maybe for audit purposes, those kinds of things. So we've got these constructs in place. Now we want to kind of enable this experience on our website. So I've added this purchase controller. And the first thing that we do is, because we're going to be playing with this application user, we're going to inject an instance of user manager. Now we don't need to configure that. That's part of the framework by default. So that'll be injected for us. And we can get through the user manager, we can get a reference to our current user, and we can also update them. I have also injected a logger because you might want to log things out. It's not really required for the sake of this demo. And then finally, I've got this payment settings injected, which is the options pattern. And we can, by using the .value, we can actually extract out an instance of the payment settings object, and then we can use that through our app. So probably, again, speaking to production quality, we're using a ViewBag here. We'd probably want to set up some kind of model and whatnot. Same thing, I'm using the ViewBag to track the subscriptions. What I do is, if the customer has so if the user that's logged in has a customer identifier, we're actually, in this case, calling out to the Stripe subscription service to get a list of all the subscriptions that belong to them. And then we actually just store that in the ViewBag. So that's we extract that out as a Stripe subscription. So this is a part of the Stripe.net library. It's a type that's available. Again, we'd probably want to decouple this a little bit if we were doing, I'm just trying to keep the code a little bit more simple. Okay, so that is the index. So that'll help us in displaying our page. So I'll get that started right now. When we actually sign up for something, I've simplified it as well. We could actually query the API to get a list of all the available plans that are available for subscription. In this particular case, I'm just saying, I already know the name of this one. I'm just going to use the standard monthly. You would want to put these into some kind of option select, some kind of list of plans that has a description in them and those kinds of things. That might be something that you want to do dynamically. It might be something that you want to hard code. It's going to depend on your context. I grab the user. So now when they've submitted this form, and we'll have a look at this over here. We'll just go to /purchase. Oh, cool. Customer identifier. Oh, I see what's going on. I bet I had previously logged in and it, oh, I haven't logged in. That's the case. There we go. So I need to register first. Brand new database, no users, so we'll do this.
Some quality error handling we have.
Yes, exactly. This is, like I said, production ready. Register my account, and I said we would kind of follow along as we went here. So now my database has been updated, and I've got this user, and we'll see that the customer identifier is still null, so I don't have anything. So in this particular case, now I should be able to go back to my purchase controller, and it says, "Hey, it looks like you don't have an active subscription." It found that null, so there we go. So now I'm just adding a subscription. Again, no options to select anything. We're just going to use that wrote one. Now they have the special credit card, which is just a series of 4 2s. And that is like the number that you use when you're using the test API. And then you can punch in whatever you want for this and a valid expiry date. So we'll just pick later this year. And I hit submit payment. This is going to kick in, and it's actually going to add the subscription. Now we come back to this page. I've got the customer identifier, so it calls out and pulls back this information from Stripe. So this has already happened. Now I can look in here and I can update this. I'll have a customer identifier right there, and we'll see that that is 8LW to get started. So I'll pop back over here, and now when I look at my customers, I've got one new customer. I've registered multiple times with the same email address, but here is the 8LW that was just created at this timestamp. We'll also see if I look under subscriptions, I can go to the standard monthly plan, and we will see a list of customers. So again, I had registered previously. I'd walked through these steps already to make sure that I could look like I knew what I was doing when we got to this part of the demo. I just forgot to delete these customers and previous ones. So now if I can just keep doing that, so I think I've got my 4 2s on there. We can just pick another set here and hit submit payment, and we'll get another plan that's added. So this is nice because if we are doing, perhaps we want to run a facility where we've got maybe a 10 unit subscription and we've got a 50 unit subscription, and the customer doesn't need the 50, but they want 20. So they could add multiple 10 subscriptions, and then that would be supported. So that's one approach that you could take. There's different ways that you can use this, obviously. But as you can see in a nutshell, that is kind of what we need to wire up. Now, this on the front end anyway. So coming back now in, when we've clicked that button, what is happening is I'm grabbing the user ID. I am resolving the user from our user manager. I've got this hard-coded plan in here. We found there's 2 cases. Either we know who the customer was because we've already purchased something for them, which would have been my first path. The second path would have been the customer pre-existed. So all we need to do is use that customer ID and then create another subscription for them. So we've already got that customer identifier. We pass in the plan ID, and we just add that to the customer account. That comes back, and then we can actually save that out. So I've got a save subscription in here. It's kind of irrelevant. It's more of an EF thing. But I just save that back to my database, and I also update my user so that those properties, for example, the customer identifier, are saved to my user. The first time through, I need to do a little bit more. I create an instance of this Stripe customer create options. I set up the email for the user, the description, which is just a way for us to describe the user. So in this particular case, I've put in the user email and the user ID. And then I set the plan that I am initially creating them with. I have a Stripe token that is injected for me. Um, that I've gotten back from the front end. I do have to come back to that piece because there's some JavaScript that we do as well. And then on the customer service side of things, on the Stripe customer service side of things, I go out and create that customer. In this case, I did the for each over the data. In this case, I'm passing back a Stripe subscription. So the create is a little bit different because in this Stripe, when I create the customer, I've associated the plan ID. So it's creating the subscription for me, and then it's coming back with a list of subscriber data. So I have to loop over that collection. In this particular case, I'm adding a single subscription. Okay, that's what's going on. In the view, what we have is we're just doing that check for if the subscriptions exist, and if not, then we display that alert that we saw. And in all cases, we are putting this form in place to capture the information for the credit card. Just minimize that. And then finally, we have to do a couple of pieces that help us protect ourselves from having to really capture any of that credit card information. I don't want to store that on my server. That's a big thing. I want to maintain my compliance for PCI purposes, for privacy purposes. So what I do is I actually take this form and I only deploy to a secure site, and then Stripe has a library that they've got, and it only connects to a secure site. And what we do is we take that card information, we create a token that we get back when we return to our handler here for the confirm piece. We get this Stripe token back. So we create the token by calling into the Stripe library, and we've got a response handler that is set up as well. That takes basically gets reference to the form. It'll process errors if there are any. Otherwise, it sets the response ID, appends it to the form, and then immediately submits it back to our handler, which if we have a look here, the action is confirm, and that's how we get into this method. We pull that Stripe token out, and then we continue processing on the server side.
So the credit card information is never even transmitted to our side.
We never even get it on our server.
Oh,
no.
That's nice. Plausible deniability.
Yeah. Exactly, in the case of a breach.
Yep.
The inevitable case of a breach. Okay, so lots of moving parts. There's the JavaScript in the view. There's the server-side pieces that we need to handle in order to communicate with, these concepts of creating users and adding subscriptions to them. We've got a library that we need to add. We need some models to store this stuff locally in our database. And of course, we need to go onto Stripe and create our account, get our API keys, and set up the plans. But I know, from doing the merchant integration route, back in 1999, this is a way easier story. This really lowers the bar. I think all told, there's a sample form on the Stripe website. The package you install, it's no big deal. It took me a few minutes to create the models and the migration. The JavaScript is freely available on the Stripe site as well. It only takes a couple minutes to register. So I think all told, this was less than an hour for me to get running on on my project, including saving things out to my database. So this is a pretty reasonable way to get payments live on your site. And it works in core.
Yeah, it seems super easy, works in core, it's fantastic. I'm sold. Now we just need something to sell.
Well, I could sell this code to you, and you could just go to my site, and I could collect a subscription from you.
Well, probably it's going to end up freely available on GitHub, so
that's probably
it's disappointing.
True. So
we need a better revenue model.
Probably. Okay.
All right, great. Well, thanks a lot, James. I don't know. I'm going to find something to charge people for. I don't know what.
I think everybody should charge something for somebody for
yeah.
something. I think,
yeah. Especially, well, don't charge me, but everybody else. Because we introduce this to you, we should get a free pass.
We should get it free.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks everybody for coming out and watching, and we'll see everybody on the next episode of the ASP.NET Monsters.
Cheers.